So this is the new Joker Origins story directed by Todd Phillips. This is not related to any other DC properties or any kind of a larger universe. It is a one-off. We've had a lot of buzz about this movie, a lot of backlash, a lot of controversy. We're going to talk about it all, but let's first get into this story. So it opens in a kind of an ambiguous time frame, but definitely somewhere between the 70s and the 80s. We meet our clown and protagonist, Arthur Fleck, played brilliantly by Joaquin Phoenix. He is kind of a failed/failing comedian. He has a job as a clown, which it looks like he works with a company of clowns that get clown gigs. At the opening, we see a scene from the trailer where he kind of gets beat up by this group of youths, and is just kind of a pathetic figure. Through the course of the film, we're exposed to the larger world of Gotham. The setting is there's a garbage strike. There's garbage piled high in the streets. There's inequality. There's political unrest. We meet Thomas Wayne, who's going to save the city and have a run for mayor. So this is the kind of the setting we're in, and Arthur Fleck is this character he's small, he's scared, he doesn't really relate or understand other people. He has this very strange condition, allegedly, where he'll just start laughing uncontrollably at the wrong times, or things that aren't funny, or things that he finds funny and no one else does. And so this is how we start the film, and then we kind of run through a series of events, and we slowly see him descend into madness and eventually become the Joker. And part of the way along the journey is a mystery, and this is part of what I really enjoyed about the film, is that it's not just about him becoming the Joker, it's about him discovering his past as well, and you get to discover it alongside with him. There's a lot of great things about this movie. I've seen it twice. There's been a lot of criticisms as well. So we're going to get into all that. This is going to be a long discussion, I think. Zach, what did you think of Joker?
I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this movie. I don't want to say I was going in skeptical. In fact, if anything, I thought I was a little overhyped. I had seen the trailer a few times, and I was very excited to see what was going on. But I definitely, I had some hot takes on Todd Phillips, who's directing drama for what seems to be the first time. Coming off of comedies like The Hangover and Due Date that he's made, I figured, this probably won't be that awesome. It's definitely a departure from traditional comic book films in that this is supposed to be a one-off and its own kind of thing and not necessarily a part of the DC universe, and it's its own beast. So I didn't know really what we were getting into, but I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it, how well made it is, how well put together it is. The script is really good. I liked it a lot. I actually really like this movie, and I'm excited to talk about it. So, what's the best place to jump in here? Where do we start this conversation?
Why don't we start with the plot, where we usually start? So I'll keep.
Sorry,
continue.
go ahead.
So, like I said, so we start with we meet Arthur Fleck, and he's kind of a loner. He's socially awkward. We meet him talking with his social worker who, kind of is his therapist and also keeps an eye on his medicine. We learn a little bit about him. We learn that he was institutionalized in Arkham. We know that he kind of has thoughts of anger and that, he's a damaged person. And then he lives at home with his mother in a very strange kind of Norman Batesy kind of awkward relationship. And then, like I said, we see him go kind of experience different things that thrust him into madness. And it's, a lot of people have not complained, but brought up the concerns about the depiction of mental illness or the depiction of, or the worry about sympathizing with this character. And I don't feel like that really happened, because while he is a sad figure and you feel bad for him at times, his actions are never justified in anything he's doing. And so I think that they tread a very careful line. But like I said, the majority of the film is him slowly discovering more about his past and also accepting, basically he goes from holding the madness at bay to just letting it overwhelm him.
Yeah, that's a fine place to kind of get things going here. Arthur Fleck is a very interesting character in that he starts the film incredibly damaged. Like, the film opens and he's on 7 medications. Like, it's not like a slow descent into horror, and that's an important place to draw a distinction from something like Scorsese's Taxi Driver, because Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle, is a relatively normal person, but he can be driven to extreme ends. Whereas in this movie, Arthur Fleck is not a normal guy. He's not a relatable person. He's his own kind of beast. And we get to see this unfolding through that while he's surrounded by people who are normal, right? So yeah, I really enjoyed the portrayal of his character that way. Joaquin Phoenix does a fantastic job of kind of bringing that out and getting just like this real bad kind of misery with a lack of understanding about it. Like, Arthur is just sad all the time, but like he doesn't seem to be able to understand why or how to make it better, and it just gets worse. It is 2 hours of descent into madness, you know?
Yeah, I had a friend who I watched this with who said that the portrayal of kind of depression was very authentic, and almost like she almost had to get up and leave because it was too close to the real thing, and not in his craziness, but in his despair, in his feeling that this is as good as it gets. It is not getting any better. His Joaquin Phoenix performance is, he's lost a ton of weight. He's absolutely emaciated, but also, you're not missing, but you don't have the big monologues or the scene chewing stuff you have from like Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. What you have is a very internalized performance. You have like his pain is broadcast through his face and his actions and his body, and he does this thing where there's a lot of actual dancing in this film, which I thought is really incredible because it's part of what seems to be just his happiness or his catharsis. And so it's going to be very difficult for people to do Joker impressions because he doesn't have these big like monologues or these big lines like he does in The Dark Knight. The performance is much more, like I said, internal. It's much more about witnessing, like seeing the pain.
Yeah, and Todd Phillips, who co-wrote the film and directed it, did a great job of kind of directing Phoenix in these scenes to really bring out like the awkward and the painful stuff. There's this great scene in the trailer that I want to highlight that features our young Arthur at a nightclub, comedy club, watching a stand-up comic, and he's sitting in a room with all of these people laughing, and he laughs at all the wrong times. And his laugh sounds totally disingenuous when he does it because he's got a real odd laugh in this movie. And he's writing down like all the times people are laughing and what they're laughing at, like a crazy person would. It's fascinating. And it's such like a genuine scene and really brings out his character as this kind of kooky outsider who just wants to fit in and maybe even, get a little bit of the limelight for himself.
Right. The laugh is a really interesting thing, and careful viewers will notice this. He actually has 2 different laughs. The one that we've seen in the trailer is what I would describe as his fake laugh, and you can tell this in the trailer itself. Like, it's the very high-pitched one. This is the one he uses when he's laughing when he thinks he's supposed to laugh. Like, someone tells a joke, he doesn't think it's funny, but he feels like he needs to laugh. There's that. So that's the first laugh, and then there's his real laugh, which is more kind of how you and I would laugh, right. And that's when he thinks something is really funny, and it's usually at the wrong time. So it's this incredible performance that digs into the character, that shows his kind of his internal feeling, his internal state, and is like I said, at the same time totally different. It's not like Heath Ledger's Joker is great and he has great lines. It's just a completely different thing.
On the other end of Joaquin Phoenix, and we'll talk more about him. We're not done yet, but on the other end of him, you've got this great foil in our city, Gotham, which is really headlined under one person, Thomas Wayne, who is very fascinatingly presented as more of a villain in this role, right? If our movie is going to be about a villain, the Joker, then our hero has to be antagonized. And so you do that by making Thomas Wayne seem like kind of a bad guy. And you get this really interesting dynamic of like the city of Gotham, which is struggling with extreme poverty and garbage in the streets and extreme unemployment and like a really struggling economy, wanting to rise up against the rich. And Thomas Wayne, who's running for mayor, is the richest man in Gotham, of course. He's Bruce Wayne's father. And you get this really cool kind of class warfare thing going under the scenes, which you uncover more of as you watch the film, and creates a perfect setting for Arthur Fleck to kind of have his demise and rise as our Joker character.
Right, but part of what, in the traditional Batman movies, he's always Batman is a symbol. He's what inspires Gotham's. He inspires the best. He inspires the people. He's a symbol. So we get a little of that, but it's in the opposite direction. The Joker and a lot of his actions end up inspiring the city that you've seen in the trailers. All these, it's like riots with people wearing Joker masks. Like you'll see in the film where that kind of comes from, but he ends up embodying that, which usually is reserved for Batman, or usually is seen by Batman. And this is kind of where his power comes from in this film. Like he doesn't do any of these like mastermind, evil genius kinds of things. It's his actions that inspire kind of the masses, and that's what's kind of scary. And this movie is so grounded, and it's almost a little bit too real. Like I said, there's some real content warnings for people. Man, back to you were saying Thomas Wayne. He's presented in a very unendearing manner. He's not sympathetic to the poor. He said, we've made something of ourselves, and there's people that are jealous of that, and that's why I need to save this city. It's so funny because he sounds like he says the kind of stuff that Batman would say, but as a rich billionaire, doing it politically. Yeah,
and I thought the movie did a great job of occasionally reminding us that this is a comic book story, because you kind of forget watching the movie. I heard somebody say when talking about this film that this feels like they had a script for a totally different film, and then they realized they could tie it into Joker. Like that's how departed it feels from the rest of the comic book worlds that we know of. You like very rarely are you reminded, oh yeah, they're in Gotham. Oh yeah, this is Thomas Wayne we're talking about, or that's Bruce Wayne right there. Like you don't really think about it a whole lot because it's such a hyper-focused story on Arthur's struggle to try to become a better person and ultimately succeed, I guess.
Yeah, and that's part of what I think is making this movie really brilliant, is that you could strip away the Batman stuff from it and you would still have a really great film about, like you said, these kind of social and political themes throughout the movie. And we do have just enough of the mythos to make it interesting. We have a lot of inspiration taken from like films such as Taxi Driver or King of Comedy, but also the Killing Joke, which is one of the most famous Joker stories, where the Joker is like this kind of pathetic failed comedian. And then we have these connections to the Wayne family as well, which is it's just done perfectly. Like there's just enough of it to keep it interesting. It's not overdone and it's not underdone.
Speaking of Taxi Driver and the King of Comedy, we can't talk about this movie without talking about Robert De Niro, of course, right. Who appears as a late-night comedy host and another kind of foil for our downtrodden comedian in Arthur Fleck. He plays Martin Flanagan, I think, host of a Tonight Show. That's his name, right? Murray Flanagan. And he's this kind of fascinating, definitely old-timey, I guess like an 80s Letterman kind of shtick, right? That's his whole deal. He's got a band.
Johnny Carson.
Yes, Johnny Carson. Yeah. The movie is set in the 80s, and I think it does a pretty good job, honestly. Like, it's fun to see De Niro, like, it seems like kind of trying at something, I feel like I see a lot of De Niro flicks, and it's just kind of, there's Robert De Niro getting his paycheck. But this one I was like, no, it feels like he's kind of injecting a little something into the role. He's got some personality, and he's definitely got some confidence on screen. Classic De Niro. I liked it.
Right, and we also have I wanted to mention Frances Conroy, who plays Arthur's mother,
Penny Fleck.
Penny Fleck, and like I said, they have this kind of uncomfortable Norman Bates relationship. They live together. He bathes her. She's she doesn't work. She's invalid. Her house has to stay in the house for all we know. But she is a very big part of his development and for why he is how he is, or how he ends up there. We have a trip to Arkham Asylum, which is always a famous place in the Batman universe, and that's a very interesting scene. We learn a lot there, and that's the other thing this film does is we touch on these special Batman places, and they all have a lot of purpose. We're not just there to say we were there. Like I said, Arkham, the comedy show, Crime Alley, these places.
So I do want to talk about the way this movie's put together. It's linear, almost exclusively, I think. I'm hard-pressed to think of when it's not just straight A to B to C kind of story, but I love the way it's shot. Todd Phillip shot almost this whole movie on a tripod. So it's like long takes, very settled, long stuff, and on occasion you get some handheld, and that's usually when things are getting nuts, right? You get handheld camera, it's a little bit more frantic, but almost always this film is locked down up until you get to see those kind of those hints of real madness under Arthur's skin, you know, and then you get some really cool long take handhelds. Really neat and really genuine. The color felt great. I saw it on a 35mm print at Alamo Drafthouse. The music was good. The presentation is very different from other comic book films, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm. I've particularly loved the score, and I can't say this person's name.
I saw them in the credits, yeah, and I thought the same thing. I was like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah,
but
it's Hildur Guðnadóttir, I think, which is a woman. Fantastic score. It's lots of, like you would hear in an indie. It's very much like cellos and basses and very string driven and different than any other kind of comic book score. Very memorable, very effective in evoking this darkness and this kind of lot, like, because it's a lot of that like real scratchy strings playing when it's like soft and you can hear the strings on the bow, that sort of thing. Excellent score.
Yeah. So to start kind of wrapping this conversation up, I think Joker is a lot of what it says on the tin, right? You see the ad for Joker. You see, okay, it's Joaquin Phoenix making a slow descent into madness for 2 hours. You go to the theater. That's what you're getting. But it's a fun ride, and it's engaging, and it's interesting, and you're right. Like, you could totally take the Batman out of it, and it would still work, and that's part of what makes it so charming. I really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. Andy, any final thoughts?
Do we want to get into any of these controversies surrounding the film? Or
why not? Right? We talked about this a couple weeks ago. A quick little something here. I wouldn't mind, because I think I feel better about my answer now than I did before. Now that I've seen the film. Same. Do you want to kind of set it up?
So there's a few things. First of all, there's been critical backlash against this film after it came out, because I think Mark Kermode said this is exactly what happened to La La Land. La La Land came out, it was a huge hit at the festivals, and then it became the popular thing to hate, and all the critics were like, well, it's not really that great, and then it came out and the audiences loved it, and now it's regarded as a really good movie. And the same thing has kind of happened here, where it's gotten too much hype from the festivals, and then I feel like expectations have been raised really high, and then people are like, well, why isn't it Citizen Kane? Well, it's a comic book movie. So there's that. The other thing, there were worries about, is it going to incite violence, or, how are we portraying this madman, this kind of broken down white man who fights back at the system. People were worried about these sorts of portrayals. I felt all those to be unfounded. Like I said, at no point is Arthur, are you sympathetic to his cause, because his actions are so heinous that you don't feel bad. And it also, I just didn't think any of that had any merit. I thought, John Wick kills 100 people in his film. No one bats an eye. The Joker puts on some face paint. Everyone's losing their mind.
Sure. Well, we should talk about that real quickly, because the film, I feel like, makes a tremendous effort to explain his cause. There's a scene where he straight up says in character, "I'm not political. I don't have an agenda." Like, he just doesn't, right? Like, that's the difference. Joker doesn't have a point. It's pretty much, it's almost selfish in a way. Arthur's attempts to kind of try to figure himself out here. He's not doing it in service of anything greater. That's part of the issue, I think, with the concerns. Like, people said, well, it might incite violence and it implies something larger, and it's like, it really doesn't. You can read it that way, but like, that's not the way I think it's intended to be taken. It's frustrating that people feel that way. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Like, nobody points to John Wick 3. Nobody's got a problem with Rambo 6 that just came out, but Joker comes out and it's an issue.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. But I in a weird way, I sympathize. I think that that I can do.
Right. The other thing, so there was an article that our friend Matt sent us about this certain song being used towards the end. That's apparently the songwriter is a convicted. Gosh, I don't know. He's in prison for sexual assault crimes of a variety of nature. And so, anyways, this guy's like in his 70s or 80s. He wrote this hit song 50 years ago. I forget the name of the real song. We all know it as the Hey song. Every single high school and college and probably middle school marching band learned this song and played it at football games. But for some reason, people have been writing articles about, like, is Joker supporting this pedophile songwriter by including this song? That guy's been getting royalties for 50 years, like long before this movie came out. So I kind of feel like that's unfounded, and I have no idea where that kind of came from.
Yeah, it's a marching band song. Like, my high school played that at every game. That was never an issue, but somebody figured out, oh, hey, the guy that wrote that's a creep, so this is a problem now. It's a bummer. I don't want to, and I know this isn't the kind of show to kind of wax about media and messaging, but, like, I don't want to just assume that, like, the information we're taking in is ignorantly maliciously ignorant. I take it or leave it. But, like, when I see when I see articles about people who are upset about this kind of stuff, it's hard not to draw conclusions like that. That, like, it seems like you're just trying to get a rise out of people just cause you're just trying to get clicks, right?
Right, exactly. And all this controversy has only helped the film. I think it set a new record for October releases, $93.5 million. That's huge. That's as much money as Justice League made in its opening weekend on, a fraction of the budget. So the controversy is not hurting the movie. I think lots of people are enjoying it, and there are some serious things. Like I said, there are some definitely. I had a couple of friends who were a little concerned and are going to kind of wait until it comes out on DVD and they can watch at home in kind of a more safe settings. Kind of stop it if they want to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree. I think. Any other thoughts for recommendations? Because I have one, but I want to.
Is there anything that we've said that we've praised this film a lot? Is there anything negative that kind of stuck out, or anything that kind of is a criticism? That's
a good question. Yeah. You got anything?
Like I said, I've seen it twice, and the first viewing, I just thought it was kind of okay, and that had to do with kind of the hype behind it. And then when I saw it again, and I let the movie just be what it is, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think part of what I really wanted that first time is, like, I just wanted more like full-fledged Joker, and really it takes him kind of the whole movie to become that. And the first time I kind of wanted him to get there sooner, so I could see him do like crime stuff or mastermind stuff, but that's not the kind of movie it is. And when I allowed myself to enjoy the movie, I enjoyed it much more thoroughly. But that's been kind of one of the criticisms.
Yeah, you get these beautiful kind of poignant vignettes in between kind of the madness, right? All the bad things that happen to Arthur Fleck. You get these moments where he's alone and wearing makeup, and he just has like a vision or something. Like, all of that I really enjoyed. I'm hard pressed to think of anything I didn't like about this movie. I'm not saying it's going to be on a top 10 list at the end of the year, but, like, considering how the year's gone so far, I could very easily put this on a top 10 list. Like, I enjoyed it a lot. The one other thing I was going to say was Warner Brothers really needs to lean into this thing they've started doing, which is give a director a property and just let them do what they want. Because it's working. Like, you gave Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman, you gave David F. Sandberg Shazam, and now you've given Todd Phillips Joker, and all three of them are really good movies. Like, really good, guys. You should, maybe keep running with this, and don't just try to lean into, like, Zack Snyderverse or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like,
don't try to copy the MCU, and you'll do fine.
Right. The hang up was running with one director's creative vision for everything, and I guess that worked with Joss Whedon because his was kind of generic enough, and he had done television like Buffy and stuff, but with Zack Snyder, like, it just didn't translate well. I would argue his first DC film, Man of Steel? No. Superman? What's his name of it?
Yeah.
Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Probably kind of holds up in its own way, right? Similar to the way these do, but trying to take that template and drop it over everything is where you've gone wrong. But when you give a director a property and you go, you know what? Just don't screw it up. Like, you might be surprised and what they can turn out. Yeah, these are all some tremendous films. DC should keep leaning into this, or just start from scratch and hard reboot and make Joker your first universe film and go from here. Just run with that. Anyway, Andy, would you recommend Joker?
Yes, absolutely. I really enjoyed it. It's an incredible portrayal by Joaquin Phoenix. Great score, good storytelling. I will say, a couple of content warnings. It is very it's rated R, so there are some really, really strong violence. That's part of what makes this different from a lot of other comic book movies. Remind me of a lot of something like Logan. It's in the league of its own, and it's very different. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and would recommend it to the avid comic book film lover.
Yeah, same boat. I agree. I would recommend it as well. I thought it was a lot of fun. It is rated R for violence, so if you're not into that, you're probably not going to like it. But if you're kind of tired of comic book movies and you just want something a little different, I think it's worth your time. I think arguably the comic book moniker might hurt it, because I think a lot of people will turn away from it because they'll just assume, oh, it's another comic book movie, I don't care. It's really good. It stands on its own. I enjoyed it a lot. You should go see Joker. It's worth your time. And with that, we should talk about our next segment. Andy, you want to